The chandeliers in the Joseon Grand's private banquet hall were the kind that cost more to maintain than most people earned in a year, and they trembled slightly, just slightly, as Kwon Seo-ha's wheelchair crossed the polished marble floor. Every eye in the room turned toward him. Most turned away again almost immediately, which was its own particular kind of cruelty, the practiced avoidance of people who had decided that looking too long at something uncomfortable made them complicit in it. Han Ji-young stood at the center of the room in white couture, her diamond engagement ring catching the chandelier light with the deliberate precision of something positioned to be seen. She had chosen this venue with care. Maximum visibility. The investors were here, the rival families, the political allies, the journalists who covered society and pretended they weren't covering power. All of them arranged as an audience for what should have been a routine pre-wedding formality. She had a different kind of routine in mind. She cleared her throat and leaned toward the microphone with the composure of a woman who had rehearsed this. I cannot marry a broken man. The silence that followed was the kind that had texture. Even the servers froze. Kwon Seo-ha's hands remained perfectly still on the armrests of his wheelchair, his face arranged into something that revealed nothing. But everyone in the room felt the shift, the specific atmospheric change of an empire built on fear and respect beginning, very quietly, to crack. The Kwon family has served the city's interests for 3 generations, Ji-young continued, her voice carrying the particular sweetness of something designed to wound while appearing reasonable. I cannot in good conscience bind myself to a dynasty that can no longer stand on its own 2 feet. A pause calibrated. I mean that both literally and professionally. A laugh moved through the crowd. Small. Pull. The kind that didn't commit to itself. Seo-ha's jaw tightened by a fraction. His second, Lee Dong-hyun, stepped forward. Seo-ha raised one finger. Don't. Ji-young removed the engagement ring and placed it on the table beside her champagne glass. The sound of diamond against crystal carried across the room like something final. I wish you well, Chairman Kwon. I'm sure you understand this is simply business. She walked out without looking back. Her heels against the marble sounded like a countdown. The moment the doors closed, the room exhaled into whispers. Phones appeared. Investors leaned together. Rival family representatives exchanged the specific glances of people recalculating. Dong-hyun moved to Seo-ha's side, but Seo-ha was already turning his chair, already leaving, because he had heard the words that were going to haunt the next 48 hours before anyone said them aloud. Without a strong alliance, the Kwon family is finished. The war room in the Kwon mansion had assembled within the hour. 8 men around a table who controlled between them the flow of everything from construction permits to port access, all of them looking at their chairman with the specific expression of people trying not to look like they were assessing damage. The Lee Syndicate is already making calls, said Executive Beck, the eldest of the council. The Park Network is questioning the Incheon agreements. We're exposed. Seo-ha stared at the wall of monitors. His expression revealed nothing. Then address it. With respect, Chairman. Dong-hyun stopped pacing and faced him directly. This isn't addressable through strategy alone. The marriage wasn't only about Ji-young. It was about signaling that this family remains intact, capable. He chose the last word carefully. We need a replacement. Someone presentable, Beck added. Someone who can stand beside you at public functions and make tonight look like a footnote. We need a wife, another council member said. Immediately. Seo-ha's laugh was short and entirely without warmth. And where exactly do you propose we find this convenient wife? Dong-hyun pulled out his tablet. His fingers moved. The interpreter from tonight's event. Every head in the room turned. The Nigerian woman? Beck frowned. She's a translator. Think about it. Dong-hyun pulled up footage from the banquet hall security system. He found the angle he wanted and held it up for the room. In the background of the frame, slightly apart from the crowd, a woman in a dark professional dress watched Ji-young's exit with an expression that was not pity, not shock, not the performative horror most of the room had managed. It was something sharper, something that looked, on closer inspection, like contempt, directed not at Seo-ha but at the woman who had just walked out. She didn't flinch, Dong-hyun said. She's educated. Korean language certification, advanced level. graduate degree from UCL in architectural design. She's in Seoul on a student visa that's complicated by her father's work permit status. He set the tablet down. She needs something. We have something she needs. The implications settled over the room like weather. Seo-ha studied the frozen image. The woman, Zuri, according to the employment records attached to the contractor file, stood with her arms at her sides and watched the scene in front of her with the focused attention of someone cataloging rather than reacting. He looked at her for a long time. "Find out everything," he said. "Then make the offer." Zuri Adeyemi was 3 unpaid invoices from the edge of a financial collapse she had been managing through sheer organizational precision when the knock came at her apartment door in Mapogu. She had just finished a 4-hour remote translation session for a corporate law firm, her eyes burning from the screen, her mind still partly occupied by the scene she had witnessed at the Joseon Grand. The humiliation of the man in the wheelchair had been difficult to watch, not because of his vulnerability, which she had registered without flinching, but because of the complete absence of surprise on his face. He had expected it. He had already made his peace with being abandoned. That detail had stayed with her on the subway home. She opened the door to find a man in a suit that communicated serious money, flanked by 2 men whose jackets sat wrong in the way of people carrying things under them. "Miss Adeyemi. My name is Lee Dong-hyun. I work for Chairman Kwon Seo-ha. May I come in?" Every instinct she had developed in 31 years of navigating spaces that hadn't been designed for her said, "This is dangerous." But she had also learned that dangerous and worth engaging were not mutually exclusive categories. 5 minutes, she said. Dong-hyun came in alone. Didn't sit. Didn't perform pleasantries. Chairman Kwon requires a wife. We're prepared to offer a 1-year contract marriage in exchange for full financial security, legal protection for your family's visa status, and a substantial settlement at the end of the term. Zuri looked at him for a moment. Then she laughed, a real laugh, startled out of her. "You cannot be serious." "Entirely serious, Miss Adeyemi. Tonight's events created a vulnerability our rivals will exploit. A marriage, even a contractual one, restores the perception of stability. So, I'm furniture. Decorative legitimacy for a man whose fiancée just called him broken in front of half of Seoul's power structure." Dong-hyun's expression didn't move. Chairman Kwon is many things. Pathetic is not among them. He built this organization before he was 30. He survived an assassination attempt that would have killed most men. He will rebuild from tonight with or without your involvement. With your involvement, it happens more efficiently. A pause. Your father's work permit renewal is in 7 weeks. The immigration office has been known to be unpredictable for families without institutional support. There it was. Silk over steel, the way all ultimatums were delivered by people who had learned that the best threats didn't need to announce themselves. Zuri walked to the window. Seoul at night, the specific density of its lights, the city she had come to build something in. She had fought for every inch of the ground she stood on, every scholarship, every reference letter extracted from professors who hadn't initially wanted to give them, every contract won in rooms where she was the only person who looked like her. And now this man was offering her a shortcut paved with deception. "I need to see him first," she said. "Your chairman. If I'm going to sell a year of my life, I want to look him in the eye." Dong-hyun produced his phone. "He's waiting downstairs." Of course he was. The black Genesis was idling at the curb. Tinted windows. Dong-hyun opened the rear door, and Zuri found herself looking at Kwon Seo-ha in person for the second time that evening, though the first time she had been 30 feet away and looking at the back of his head. He was younger than she had expected from his reputation. 33, maybe 34, with the kind of face that would have been described as striking if it weren't so carefully evacuated of expression. His wheelchair was medical grade and expensive. His suit was custom. His watch cost more than her degree. And his eyes, dark, assessing, and completely empty of the desperate plea she had anticipated, caught her and held her with the specific attention of someone who had made a practice of reading people accurately. "You wanted to see me," he said. "Here I am." Zuri climbed in without taking Dong-hyun's offered hand. The door closed behind her. "Why me?" she said directly. "You have money. You could hire someone who actually wants this role, An actress, someone trained for it. Actresses want exposure. Models want visibility. You want security, and you're intelligent enough to understand the terms without requiring them to be explained twice. His voice was measured, precise. You also don't look at me the way everyone else in that room did tonight. How did everyone else look at you? Like I was already finished. A ghost of something. Not quite anger. Not quite pain. Both. Crossed his face. My fiancée started looking at me, that way the morning I woke up in this chair. By the time she left tonight, she'd been practicing for 6 months. Zuri was quiet for a moment. I have conditions. I assumed you would. I won't be decoration. If I'm your wife, contractually or otherwise, I speak freely in your presence. I won't be managed, dismissed, or talked around. I keep my own schedule, my own identity, my own professional life. I am not a replacement for Ji-young. I am entering a business arrangement with defined terms. She held his gaze. In exchange, in public, I play the role completely. Devoted, unified, unshakable. Whatever I think privately stays private. In front of the world, we are solid. Something moved in his expression. The specific movement of someone running calculations and arriving at a result they hadn't quite predicted. Agreed. With one addition. He held her gaze. Whatever you privately think of me or this arrangement, in front of the world, you don't just perform devotion. You perform certainty. Not a woman who was hired. A woman who chose. I can do that. Then we have an agreement. He extended his hand. She looked at it. The hand of a man who had built an empire and then had everything he thought was stable revealed as contingent. Then she took it. His grip was firm and steady and told her nothing she hadn't already concluded.
1 year, she said.
1 year, he agreed. The wedding was 72 hours later, in a ceremony so stripped of ceremony it felt like a different category of event. Zuri wore a white dress she had bought that morning from a department store in Myeongdong. Seo-ha wore black, his wheelchair positioned beside her rather than in front. The officiant moved through the vows with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times and had learned not to editorialize. When the instruction came to kiss the bride, Seo-ha inclined his head toward her, acknowledgement, not affection. She returned it. Business concluded. The media announcement, by contrast, was not stripped of anything. The photograph they released had been composed with the care of a document. Zuri stood beside Seo-ha's wheelchair, one hand resting on his shoulder, both of them looking directly at the camera with expressions of complete, unperformative authority. Within 4 hours it had moved through every major news and gossip platform in Seoul. The comments ranged from speculation to awe to the specific cynicism of people who recognized damage control when they saw it and wanted credit for the recognition. Zuri read through the comments once. Then she put her phone down and focused on the more immediate problem of understanding the house she had moved into. The Kwon mansion was a fortress that had learned to look like a home. 12 bedrooms, a full security apparatus, staff who had developed the specific skill of being present without being visible. They treated her with careful, watchful respect. She was the chairman's wife, even if everyone on the premises understood the asterisk attached to that fact. Her room was beautiful and entirely impersonal, the room of a space that had been designed to host someone rather than belong to anyone. Seo-ha's room was 3 doors down. In the first 48 hours, they passed each other twice. Both times, a nod. Nothing exchanged. On the 3rd day, Zuri decided that being a ghost in her own household was a choice, and she was choosing differently. She found him in his office, surrounded by monitors and documents, Dong-hyun at his shoulder with a tablet, neither of them acknowledging her entrance. "Your desk faces the window," she said. Both men looked up. "You're backlit during video calls. It puts you in silhouette, which reads as evasion. Your filing system requires you to cross the room repeatedly, which is inefficient given your mobility. And your security monitors are positioned 6 inches too high. You're craning your neck without realizing it." She looked around the room with the specific attention of someone who had spent 6 years studying how spaces worked against the people in them. "It's all wrong." The silence was the particular silence of people who had never been spoken to this way in this room. "This is my office," Seo-ha said. The steel underneath was audible. And you're operating it like someone who's already surrendered. She met his eyes without flinching. You survived an assassination attempt and built something from nothing.
Stop.
Running your command center like a man who's given up. If we're going to convince Seoul that the Kwon family is still a force, you have to start by convincing yourself. A long moment. Dong-hyun appeared to have stopped breathing. Then the corner of Seo-ha's mouth moved. Not a smile.
The precursor to one.
You have 1 hour, he said. Move whatever you want. If I don't approve the result, you restore it exactly. Zuri nodded and went to work. The changes were architectural rather than decorative. Everything she touched for a reason she could name. Desk repositioned for optimal light and camera presence. Files reorganized within reach. Monitors lowered and angled. By the time she finished, the office looked less like a space a person was surviving and more like a space a person was commanding from. Seo-ha moved through it, testing angles and access points, his expression neutral throughout. When he finished, he said, "Acceptable." It was the beginning. Over the following 2 weeks, Zuri moved herself into the operational life of the Kwon organization the way she moved into a new project, by watching first, then noticing, then acting on what she noticed. She attended strategy sessions initially as a silent presence. The executives tolerated her with the specific tolerance of people who considered her temporary and therefore not worth the energy of actual objection. They underestimated her. She let them. She was good at being underestimated. She had been practicing since she was 19. She noticed things. During a port operations review, Lieutenant Cho's numbers shifted between the opening presentation and the supporting documents in a way that was small enough to attribute to rounding and large enough to be intentional. During a property discussion, Executive Beck's timeline didn't align with the public planning records she had cross-referenced that morning. She kept notes. She said nothing. She let the pattern accumulate until it was undeniable. The confrontation came at a dinner with Japanese investors. Cho was presenting updated shipping projections when Zuri set her wine glass down with enough deliberateness to interrupt without appearing to interrupt. "The Busan container numbers," she said pleasantly. "They're incorrect." The room's attention shifted. Cho's smile was the particular smile of a man who had never been challenged in a professional context by someone he considered ornamental. "Mrs. Kwon, these are complex instruments. I have a graduate degree in architectural design, which requires extensive mathematical modeling." She pulled out her tablet. "I've been cross-referencing your reported volumes against the public shipping manifests. Your numbers run 30% above actual throughput, which means you're either remarkably bad at your job or you've been skimming and counting on nobody to check the math carefully enough to notice." The temperature dropped. Seo-ha's fingers drummed once against his armrest. One time. The only tell she had learned to read. Cho's smile was gone. "Chairman, I assure you." "Source documents," Seo-ha said quietly.
"Now."
It took Cho 20 minutes to produce them. Another 10 for Dong-hyun to verify what Zuri had already established. Cho had been constructing ghost shipments, reporting movements that hadn't occurred, siphoning the margin into an account that had been building for 14 months. Seo-ha's response was delivered in a voice so calm it was more frightening than volume would have been. Demotion, full audit, the implicit understanding that the resolution of the audit would determine what happened next. Cho left the room looking like a decade had caught up with him. After the meeting, Seo-ha found her eye across the room. He didn't thank her. He didn't need to. What he gave her was different, the specific, considered look of a man updating his assessment of a person. That night, he knocked on her door for the first time since the wedding. "Come in," she called, closing the architectural journals she had been annotating. He wheeled himself in with the ease of someone who had been practicing his navigation of the house when no one was watching. She had noticed the incremental improvements over the 2 weeks, the turning radius tighter, the threshold crossing smoother.
Practicing.
Quietly, when no one was around to observe it. "You embarrassed Cho in front of the investors," he said. "Cho was stealing from you in front of the investors for 14 months. I'd call it even. I'm not criticizing. I'm asking why you bothered. In 10 months you walk away from all of this. Why invest the energy?" She closed the journal fully and gave him her attention. "Because I don't do things halfway." You wanted a wife who could play the role convincingly. Playing it convincingly means actually caring whether the thing I'm propping up survives the year. Call it professional integrity.
She paused.
And, because what I said to Cho, I believed it. Your numbers were being manipulated, and it needed to be said. He studied her for a long moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone performing investment. Going through the motions because the contract required it. He held her gaze. You're actually here. So are you, she said. That's what I didn't expect. I expected someone who had surrendered to the situation. Someone running out the clock. She looked at him directly. You're not broken, Seo-ha. You're just waiting for everyone around you to stop acting like you are. The words found their target. She saw it in the slight tightening of his hands, the breath he took that was a fraction longer than the ones before it. Get some rest, he said. Investor breakfast tomorrow. Formal. I'm always formal, she said. But as he left, she watched the way he moved through the doorway, the chair navigating the threshold with a precision that hadn't been there 2 weeks ago, and felt something she had not expected to feel in this arrangement. Something that was going to require careful management. The investor breakfast was held at the Latte Hotel with a view of the Han River that the city's elite used as a backdrop for decisions worth billions. Zuri wore a tailored navy suit that communicated authority without performing it. She took the seat to Seo-ha's right without hesitation, the seat of equals, not the seat of decorative adjacency. The investors were old money and new technology and political access, all of them performing, not staring at Seo-ha's wheelchair while simultaneously assessing whether the Kwon organization was still the right address for their capital. Executive Director Cheon, mid-60s, reputation for cruelty dressed as frankness, leaned back in his chair with the posture of a man who had decided to say the thing everyone else was thinking. Chairman Kwon, I must say, the speed of your recent marriage surprised many of us. After such a public difficulty, one might expect a period of recovery. The table went still. Miss Han clarified her priorities, Seo-ha said. I adapted accordingly. Adaptation is fundamental. Cheon's smile widened. Indeed. Though one might argue that genuine strength doesn't require adaptation, that it controls circumstances rather than responding to them. He let the implication settle. Are you still strong enough? Before Seo-ha could answer, Zuri set her coffee cup down with a deliberateness that pulled every eye at the table. Executive Director Cheon. Her voice was pleasant, precise, with an edge that didn't announce itself until it had already landed. I find it interesting that you equate adaptation with weakness. In my field, architectural design, we have a specific term for structures that refuse to adapt to applied pressure. We call them failures in waiting. The structures that survive, the ones that outlast earthquakes and decades of use, are the ones capable of absorbing force without losing their fundamental integrity. She leaned forward by a fraction. Chairman Kwon's capacity to rebuild following betrayal and significant physical injury doesn't demonstrate weakness. It demonstrates the kind of resilience that most people in this room will never be tested for because they have never faced what he has faced. She held Cheon's gaze steadily. I'd encourage you not to mistake survival for fragility. The silence that followed was the silence of a room that has watched someone do something unexpected and is still processing it. Cheon's smile had gone rigid. The other investors found things on their plates to examine. Seo-ha reached for his water glass, took a measured sip. Perhaps we should discuss the Osaka partnership projections. The margin improvements in Q3 should be of interest. By the time the breakfast ended, 3 investors had requested private meetings about expanded positions. Cheon left early, citing a scheduling conflict nobody believed. In the car afterward, Seo-ha was silent for long enough that Zuri began to wonder if she had overstepped. Then, you didn't have to do that. In public we're unbreakable, she said. That was the agreement. Most people would have let me handle Cheon myself. Most people aren't married to you. She turned to look at him. Even temporarily. Something in his eyes shifted. The beginning of something she recognized, but didn't yet have a name for in the context of this particular man. Then Dong-hyun's phone rang, and his expression as he listened made Zuri's attention sharpen immediately. Ji-young is giving an interview, Dong-hyun said. Seoul Daily. Running tomorrow morning. She's claiming cognitive decline since the accident, that the marriage to an unknown foreigner proves compromised judgment. Zuri felt something hot and clean move through her. That's defamation. That's strategy, Seo-ha corrected. His voice was cold. By tomorrow afternoon, half of Seoul will be questioning whether I'm fit to manage a corner store, much less a syndicate. Then we don't let her control the narrative. Zuri's mind was already moving. We give them a better one. Something so compelling that her version becomes the footnote. She looked at Seo-ha. Is there an event this week? Something high-profile, already on the calendar. Dong-hyun was already typing. The Honggang Foundation Gala. 3 days out. Social event of the season. Politicians, business leaders, international press. Can we secure enhanced positioning? Whatever it costs, Seo-ha said. He looked at her. And invite Ji-young. Zuri raised an eyebrow. I want her there, he said, and there was something almost predatory in the stillness of his expression. I want her to watch. The preparation was 72 hours of compressed intensity. Designers arrived at the mansion. Security teams coordinated with venue staff. Dong-hyun personally worked the guest list while simultaneously planting strategic mentions of the new Mrs. Kwon in the right ears. Zuri stood through 3 fittings, memorized the names and relationships of every significant guest attending, and prepared for a room that would be watching her with the specific attention of people who had come to assess rather than celebrate. The night before the gala, she found Seo-ha in the private gym that had been converted into a therapy space. He was alone, gripping the parallel bars, his face tight with concentration and the specific expression of pain being managed rather than avoided. His physical therapist was not present. This was not a scheduled session. This was something he did when no one was supposed to see. She should have retreated. How long, she said instead. His head came up. For a moment, the composure cracked. She saw the actual person underneath, the one who hadn't intended to be observed in this room. Then control reasserted itself. Since the week of the wedding. Why didn't you say anything? Because I'm tired of being looked at like I'm already finished. He released the bars and settled back into his chair, breathing controlled. And because Cho wasn't the only one stealing from me. Someone tampered with my car before the accident. The brake lines, professional work, designed to fail at speed. Investigators found evidence. They couldn't identify the source. Too many people with solid alibis. The cold that moved through Zuri's chest was specific and located. You're certain? Certain enough. His voice was matter-of-fact in the way of someone who had processed a thing into information and was now treating it as such. When Ji-young left, I told myself it was fine. Let them think I'm diminished. Let them take what they want. I was too tired to care. He looked up at her, and what she saw in his face was the thing she had not expected and had been carefully not examining for 2 weeks. Now I have a reason to care again. The words sat between them. Zuri chose to address the practical component. If someone in your inner circle ordered the accident, she said, they'll try again. Not at the gala, too visible. After, when they think you're distracted. Yes. Then we make sure you're never distracted. She held his gaze. And tomorrow night, we give whoever is watching exactly enough confidence to make a move. He studied her for a long moment. This isn't your fight. You keep saying that. She moved to the doorway. It keeps being wrong. He was quiet for a moment. Then, stay close to me tomorrow. Not beside me, with me. I need at least one person in that room who sees me as something other than a target or a liability. I'll be there, she said. And anyone who treats you as less than what you are answers to me first. Something passed across his face that she was running out of ways to misidentify. I'm beginning to understand why Dong-hyun suggested you. Because I'm stubborn? Because you're dangerous in exactly the right ways. The Honggang Foundation Gala occupied a restored traditional palace that had been updated with contemporary luxury in the specific way of places that understood their own history and had decided to honor it. Crystal and Hanji screens, lacquered wood and modern steel. Every surface cost something. Zuri's gown had been designed in 36 hours, deep emerald silk, structured to move, cut to be noticed without requesting it. Her hair was styled in a way that honored where she came from and where she was. She wore minimal jewelry except for the platinum band Seo-ha had given her at the registry office, plain and real and heavier than its weight. He was waiting at the base of the main staircase. When she came down, something crossed his face that she had never seen there before, unguarded, momentary enough. "You look like someone who came to win," he said quietly. "Then let's make sure we do." They entered together, her hand resting on his shoulder, his chair moving with the quiet efficiency of a man who had spent months learning to navigate every surface like it owed him access. Conversation slowed as they passed. The whispers moved. Cameras found them. Han Ji-young was near the bar in white, of course white, surrounded by the specific crowd of people who gathered around someone they considered interesting. When she saw them enter, her expression performed warmth over something else entirely. The first hour was the performance they had practiced without rehearsing, Seo-ha moving through his network of allies and investors with the confidence of a man who had never doubted his own authority, Zuri at his side translating when useful, observing always, inserting herself into conversations at exactly the moments when her presence shifted the dynamic in his favor. She remembered names. She asked the right questions. She reinforced without subordinating. People who had come expecting to find a wounded man performing stability found something else. They found a partnership. Ji-young approached during the reception portion, when the room had relaxed enough for it to seem natural. "Seo-ha," she said, warmly, as if they shared something fond between them. "And this must be your wife." "How unexpected." "Unexpected," Zuri agreed pleasantly. "Like discovering someone's real character only when they've chosen to display it publicly." Ji-young's smile didn't waver. Her eyes did. "I'm sure Seo-ha has explained that our parting was mutual. He explained that you called him broken and walked out the moment he needed you." Zuri's voice was sweet in the way of things designed to carry while appearing not to project. "I suppose mutual means different things to different people." Several nearby conversations stopped being conversations and became audience. Seo-ha's hand found Zuri's where it rested on his shoulder, his fingers closing around hers. Not for the cameras. She knew the difference. "I believe your new fiancé is waiting for you," he said. "Something about a constituency event. I hope that's going as planned." It was precise. Everyone in the room knew that Ji-young had traded Seo-ha for a politician with ambitions and no real leverage, the kind of trade that looked like an upgrade until you understood what you'd given up. Ji-young's smile finally broke. "She left without giving it a name." "That was thorough," Zuri murmured. "She started it publicly," he said. "We finished it publicly. That's all." They stood together in the aftermath, and it was Dong-hyun appearing at Seo-ha's shoulder that changed the register of the evening. His face was the face of someone managing something urgent while trying not to show it. "Executive Beck left the venue 40 minutes ago," he said quietly. "He's meeting someone at a restaurant in Gangnam that we don't have on record." Zuri felt the pieces she had been keeping separate for 2 weeks suddenly want to arrange themselves into a single picture. "How many people had access to his car the day before the accident?" she said. Seo-ha met her eyes. Beck was one of 3. And Cho, who was feeding Cho's information upward. Someone had to be validating the ghost shipments. "We're checking now," Dong-hyun said, already on his phone. "It's not one person," Zuri said. The picture was clear now in the way that architectural load calculations were clear once you had all the variables. "It's coordinated. Multiple people, different functions, working toward the same outcome. And tonight," Seo-ha said quietly, "was about making them believe I'm distracted enough to move. Then we need to leave." The explosion took the decision away from them. The west wing of the palace detonated with a force that shook the chandeliers and turned the room into controlled chaos. Guests running, security mobilizing, smoke beginning to move. Through the corridors, Zuri's ears rang. The room she had been standing in seconds ago was now unrecognizable. Through the chaos, she caught a face near the service entrance. Beck, phone in hand, expression calibrated to something that read as shock, but was something else. Something satisfied. "There." She pointed, but Beck was already moving, using the crowd and the smoke as cover. Dong-hyun barked into his radio. Security converged. The elegant gala had become something else entirely. A hand on her arm. She spun, ready, but it was security trying to move her toward the evacuation route. She pulled free and moved toward Seo-ha instead, because in public they were unbreakable, and that meant she didn't leave him when the world was burning down around them. She reached him as the second explosion detonated in the car park. The ground moved. His wheelchair had taken damage from the first blast, one wheel bent at an angle that compromised its function. She grabbed the handles without discussion. "We go together," she said. The security chief looked ready to argue. Seo-ha looked at him. "Do what she says." They made it to the armored vehicle through what felt like a different kind of world, one where the city she had come to build something and had decided to express itself through fire. Once the doors were locked and the glass between them and the chaos was bulletproof, Zuri finally let herself breathe. Seo-ha's eyes were burning with a fury she had not seen from him before. "Get me back," he said. "Alive." Dong-hyun was already coordinating. Reports came back in fragments. Beck spotted near the river. 3 teams converging. And then, within the hour, communications recovered from Beck's seized phone revealing the third name in the architecture of the conspiracy. A politician named Park Min-ho, whose ambitions required the Kwon territories and who had provided alibi infrastructure for the original accident. And Ji-young, who had known, who had been fed the intelligence that made her exit from the engagement not a response to Seo-ha's injury, but a calculated withdrawal from a situation she had helped create. "She knew before she left you," Zuri said. The nausea was specific and located. "She didn't leave because of a wheelchair. She left because she knew someone had tried to kill you and wanted distance from the outcome. And position herself as the woman who saw the decline coming." His voice was the temperature of something that had never been warm. "Brilliant, really. What do we do with them?" Beck faces charges. All of it, attempted murder, terrorism, the full weight of what can be proven publicly. He looked at her. "Min-ho's political career ends. I don't care how Dong-hyun makes it happen, but I want every uncomfortable thing he's ever done available for public inspection." He paused. "And Ji-young?"
Zuri thought about it.
"Nothing direct. Let her live inside the knowledge that she bet on your death and lost everything anyway. Let her watch you rebuild. The truth about the conspiracy will surface through the legal proceedings. Let the public reach its own conclusions." She held his gaze. "The best outcome is making her irrelevant while she's still watching." He studied her. "Then, Dong-hyun. Full disclosure to press by morning. Conspiracy, coordination. All of it. Ji-young is not touched directly. By sunrise, the story had been completely rewritten. Not a broken man clinging to relevance. A man who had survived assassination and dismantled the conspiracy behind it. Not a strategic wife. A woman who had stood beside him through literal fire, who had grabbed a damaged wheelchair and refused to leave. The photographs from the gala, Zuri in the emerald gown, her hand steady on Seo-ha's shoulder, both of them projecting the specific authority of people who had decided to win and were in the process of doing it, moved through every platform in Seoul within hours. 3 days later, Seo-ha found her in his office. She had been reviewing architectural proposals for a new client, her own, the beginning of the firm she had been building in the margins of this year, and didn't hear him come in until his chair stopped near the desk. "You should be sleeping," she said without looking up. "It's past midnight. I wanted to tell you something before I thought better of it." She put down her pen. "The contract," he said. "I want to revisit the terms." Her heart made a decision she hadn't cleared with her brain. "What do you mean?" "I mean that this started as a transaction. Mutual benefit, defined term, clean exit. And somewhere in the last month, he stopped, and what she saw on his face was the thing she had been carefully not naming, fully visible now, unarmored. It stopped being a transaction for me. I want to know if I'm reading that correctly." He extended his hand across the desk, open. The same gesture she had made in the car, weeks ago, when she had agreed to this. She looked at his hand, then at him. Then she put her hand in his. "You're reading it correctly," she said. The kiss was careful and unhurried, and nothing like the performance of the past weeks. No audience, no cameras, no calculation. Just 2 people in an office at midnight who had arrived at something through a route neither of them had expected to travel. When they separated, he was looking at her with an expression she had never seen from him in any public context. Open. Genuinely open. "I'm rewriting the contract," he said. "No expiration. No exit clause. Just, as long as we both choose this." "That's not a contract," she said. "That's a marriage." "Then maybe it's time we had a real one." The months that followed were the kind that built things. Beck's prosecution became a matter of public record and public fascination. The loyal lieutenant who had tried to kill the man he served, now serving a sentence that would outlast most of his remaining years. Park Min-ho's political career disintegrated in a cascade of released records that the public found sufficiently damning to handle, without Seo-ha needing to touch them directly. Ji-young left Korea. Last reported location, Paris, doing the work of rebuilding a reputation among people unfamiliar with its prior form. The Kwon organization expanded into legitimate territory with the speed of something that had been suppressed and was now moving in its natural direction. New partnerships. Old alliances strengthened and rebuilt on cleaner foundations. Investors who had been hedging their positions now competed for access. Zuri's architectural firm took its first major commission, the Kwon corporate campus, redesigned from the inside out for accessibility and authority simultaneously. Her waiting list for new clients grew to 6 months. She hired 2 junior architects. She mentored a graduate student from KAIST who reminded her of herself at 23. Seo-ha continued his physical therapy without making a performance of it. He did not fully regain the ability to walk unaided. He regained something more durable, the specific confidence of a man who has stopped measuring his strength against a standard that no longer applies and started building one of his own. One evening, 9 months after the gala, he knocked on her office door. She had taken over the room off the main corridor and covered its walls in drawings and material samples and the organized evidence of a firm becoming real. "We found the 4th piece," he said. She looked up. "Lieutenant Cho, the one you caught. He was feeding Beck operational intelligence the entire time. We missed him in the initial investigation. But Dong-hyun found the communications trail last week."
He paused.
"He's been meeting with the Lee syndicate. He's positioning himself to make another attempt. Not on me this time." The cold was immediate and specific. "On me," she said. "He believes removing you destabilizes me. That I'll retreat into the kind of isolation I was in before if you're gone." His voice was even. "He's wrong. But wrong people with syringes are still dangerous." Dong-hyun laid out the surveillance photographs on her desk. Cho, with Lee family contacts. The meetings, the timing, the pattern that resolved into intention. "What's the plan?" she said. Seo-ha looked at her steadily. "We let him believe he has an opening. Set a trap. Use the opening he thinks he has. With me as the mechanism. You don't have to. He underestimates me," she said. "He has since I sat down at that dinner table and pointed out his math. He thinks I'm performing in a world I don't belong in." She held Seo-ha's gaze. "Let him act on that assumption. Let him make his move. And when he does, end this." Seo-ha looked at her for a long moment. "You're certain?" "I'm certain. I'm tired of people trying to take things from us." She said us without thinking about it. She noticed she had said it. "So, did he? And I trust you to make sure I'm not actually in danger while we let him think I am." "Always," he said. "Simple. Absolute." The charity auction was held in a converted warehouse in Yeongdeungpo. Exposed brick, contemporary art, the specific aesthetic of money that wanted to be seen as unpretentious. Zuri wore red, bold, visible, easy to track. She bid on 3 pieces. She made conversation. She performed a woman without concerns, which was itself a kind of architecture, building a structure that looked like openness in order to channel what came toward it. Cho found her during the final auction, approaching with the friendliness of someone who had rehearsed his cover. "Mrs. Kwon, unusual to see you here, without the chairman." "I attend events independently," she said. "I'm surprised to see you. I thought you were managing the Busan operations." "I had business in Seoul. I have information about the Lee family that your husband would want." His smile was the smile of a man who believed he was smarter than the room. 5 minutes. The private viewing space upstairs. Every nerve she had was fully engaged. 5 minutes, she agreed. The room he led her to was small, windowless, the specific configuration of a space designed for privacy. He closed the door. The friendly expression left his face with the abruptness of a mask being removed. "You made a mistake coming here alone," he said. "Did I?" Her hand was near the bracelet. The panic signal Dong-hyun had calibrated that afternoon. "The chairman's attachment to you is a structural weakness. Remove the attachment, the structure becomes vulnerable." He withdraws. That's the pattern. He produced a syringe from his jacket with the confidence of a man who believed the next few seconds were already decided. "Nothing personal, Mrs. Kwon. I appreciate the clarification," she said, and pressed the signal. The door came off its hinges. Dong-hyun first, then 4 security personnel, weapons already deployed, formation clean. Cho spun toward the door, the syringe still in his hand, his confidence dissolving into something that recognized the specific shape of having been outmaneuvered. Then Seo-ha appeared in the doorway, and something in Cho's face simply broke. The architecture of his confidence collapsed entirely.
"You knew," he said.
This was... Did you really believe you were smarter than me in my own city? Seo-ha's voice was quiet, which was its own kind of answer. The Lee family has already told me about you. You were never a partner to them. You were a test of our security. They were measuring our response time. Cho's hands shook. Dong-hyun moved in. The syringe was secured. The zip ties followed. As they led Cho out, Seo-ha wheeled to Zuri's side. "Are you all right?" "Angry," she said. "But fine." She looked at him. "Is it always going to be like this?"
"Probably," he said.
"This is the world I built." He took her hand. "But I'm not fighting to hold territory anymore. I'm fighting to protect something worth protecting." He looked at her. "That changes what I'm willing to do and how I do it." She squeezed his hand. "Then we keep building."
"Together," he said.
"Always together." The arrest of Cho, and the detailed public accounting of the full conspiracy that accompanied it, reframed the Kwon story entirely, not a dynasty managing decline, but an organization that had identified, exposed, and neutralized a coordinated internal betrayal while continuing to expand. The narrative soul had been given by Ji-young's interview became, in retrospect, part of the evidence for how badly she had misjudged the man she had abandoned. 3 days after Cho's arrest, Seo-ha was waiting in the formal sitting room when Zuri came home, which he never used. He was wearing a suit, which he didn't do in the evenings. He was holding a box. "What's wrong?" she said immediately. "Nothing is wrong." He looked, for the first time in her experience of him, nervous. It was extraordinary on his face. "I need to do something correctly this time. We got married for strategy. The contract required certain performances, certain commitments. And somewhere in the last year," he opened the box. The ring was not the simple platinum band she wore. It was a black diamond surrounded by emeralds, the color she had worn the night everything changed, set in platinum, designed to be worn by someone who had earned the right to be unmistakable. "I cannot give you simplicity or safety," he said. "I cannot promise you a life that doesn't carry risks I would give anything to eliminate. But I can promise you honesty and partnership, and a love that I genuinely did not believe I was capable of until you reorganized my office and told me I wasn't broken and grabbed my wheelchair in a burning building and refused to leave." His eyes held hers steadily. "Zuri Adeyemi, will you marry me? Not for a contract, not for strategy, not because either of us needs the other to survive, but because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life being worth the faith you showed me." She was crying. She noticed this with the detached observation of someone whose body had made a decision before their brain caught up with it. "You've already been worth it," she said. "For months." "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes to all of it." She held out her hand. "To you, to this life, to whatever comes next." He slid the ring onto her finger. Then he pulled her into his arms, and the kiss that followed was nothing like the careful, public performances of their first months. It was certain. It was chosen. It was the kiss of two people who had arrived somewhere real and were not pretending otherwise. When they finally separated, she was laughing. "Do we need another wedding?" she asked. "Or does the first one stand?" "The first one stands," he said. But we're doing a reception. A real one. I want your father there. I want everyone who matters to you in the same room so I can introduce you properly, not as a strategy, as my wife. Our empire, she said. Our empire, he agreed. The reception was held in the Kwon mansion on a night in early spring when Seoul was doing the thing it did at that time of year, reconsidering itself, offering color after months of restraint. The space had been transformed to hold both their histories, traditional Korean elements and Nigerian ones, each honoring the other, without subordinating either. The colors were rich. The music moved between languages. The food carried memory. Zuri's father flew from Lagos and cried when he saw her, which made Dong-hyun look away very quickly and examine something on his phone with tremendous focus. At the center of it, Seo-ha and Zuri stood together. Not a broken man and his replacement. Not a contract and its terms. Two people who had found each other through the wreckage of other people's calculations and had built something that none of those calculations had accounted for. During the reception, Seo-ha stood. Using a cane, his physical therapist nearby, his face carrying the expression of a man who had decided to do something difficult and had already committed to finishing it. The room went completely silent. A year ago, he said, I was prepared to accept that I was finished. I had lost the ability to walk, an engagement that turned out to be a business arrangement I hadn't recognized as one, and very nearly my life. I thought the most I could do was manage the decline. He looked at Zuri. And then this woman sat across from me in a car and told me she had conditions, and she meant every one of them. She reorganized my office, caught a man stealing from me that my entire council had missed, stood between me and public humiliation more than once, and grabbed a damaged wheelchair in a building that was on fire and refused to let go.
His voice was steady.
His eyes were not. She saw me as a person when most people in my life saw either a liability or an opportunity. And she taught me the only thing I hadn't been able to teach myself, that strength is not the absence of damage. It's what you build after. He raised his glass. To my wife. To my partner. Thank you for staying. The room erupted. Zuri stood, and the thing she felt in her chest as she moved to his side, as his arm came around her, as she looked out at the faces of people she loved and people she had earned and a city that had tested her and been tested in return, was not the thing she had expected to feel when she had knocked on an apartment door and agreed to sell a year of her life. It was the specific, improbable, absolute sensation of being exactly where she had always been trying to get. To the King of Seoul, she said, raising her glass, who taught me that vulnerability and authority were never opposites. That the most powerful thing a person can do is choose to trust someone and mean it. She looked at him. I love you, Kwon Seo-ha. I love you, Zuri Kwon. She kissed him in front of all of them, unheld and unperformed, and the sound that came back from the room was the sound of people witnessing something they recognized as real. Later, on the terrace, with Seoul glittering below them and the reception still going inside, Seo-ha sat beside her in the cool spring air. What are you thinking? He asked. I'm thinking about what I came here to build, she said. A career. A future. A life that was larger than the limitations I'd been handed. She looked at him. I built all of that. And then I built this on top of it, which I did not plan. Any regrets? One small one. He looked at her. That we wasted time on a contract when we could have just been honest sooner. He laughed, the real laugh, the one she had heard for the first time on the rooftop of the Joseon Grand, what felt like a different life, and put his arm around her shoulders. The best stories, he said, start with the worst odds. Then we're a very good story. We're a legend, he said, still being written. She leaned into him, and Seoul spread below them, and inside their home the people who mattered to them were celebrating something that had begun as a transaction, and had become the thing that transactions could never account for, the specific, ordinary, extraordinary fact of two people choosing each other freely, and meaning it completely. If this story moved you, drop a comment, and tell me which moment got you. Please like and subscribe for more stories where the overlooked become unstoppable. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that the best things often start with the worst circumstances. See you in the next one.